Nearly forgot to use the microphone. Nearly forgot to use the microphone. So just a few points before we begin. As we proceed, please feel free to ask questions. The questions are very welcome, provided we don't stray too far off topic and provided we don't lose too much time. Also, I have a fairly deep Irish accent, so please remind me to slow down or to speak up or shout up as needs be as we go along. So to commence the proceedings, we can sing the Song of Lyra to set a coherent base from which we can work. So if everybody is ready, everybody's sitting comfortable, we can commence with the Song of Lyra. Maharata. Okay, so the God Worlds effectively is a story of creation, and this story begins with source, it ends with source. Source is the foundation on which the whole structure is built, and in fact, as we opened the case to take out the projector, we had a very timely reminder. My relationship with source comes first. It's a point that Mac emphasizes again and again, and it's very, very important. So my relationship with source comes first. Part of my relationship with source is how I perceive source, how I conceive source, what is my conception of source. And source is it's the core concept on which all of creation is built, and in particular on which the God worlds are built. So it's very worthwhile to take a few minutes just to examine, just to review our conception of source. So we can ask ourselves, like, how do we perceive source? And this is something that we can ask ourselves almost daily. And every day we will come into a new understanding, a new relationship with source, or a new depth to our relationship with source. Now, in very general terms, we can conceive of source as a vast pool of consciousness that underlies all of creation. Okay? So, very welcome, Mel. Yeah. So source is this vast pool of consciousness. Now, to make it a bit more alive, a bit more immediate, we can regard it as a vast pool of aliveness. It is the aliveness that underlies all of creation. Now, this aliveness isn't something that's very remote from us. It's something that's very, very direct, very, very immediate in our lives. If we ask ourselves, so, what is it that's alive within ourselves? What is it that's alive within me? What is it that's alive in everything around me? For example, if we look in the mirror and ask ourselves, like, what is it that's looking out through my eyes? Ultimately, what's looking out through my eyes, through all of our eyes, is source. Now, what is looking out through my body initially is my soul. What's looking out through that is an oversoul, and so on. So there are various veils that source wears. But as we progress backwards through the veils, we ultimately come to the pure and very free aliveness that underlies all of creation, and that is source. So ultimately, what is alive within me, what is alive within the flowers, the trees, the animals, that is source. Now, the expressions of source can have various veils of distortion, but ultimately behind all of those, we do have source. So source isn't something that's very, very remote from us. It is very, very direct, very immediate, very present in our lives. Now, we can conceive of source in religious terms, in terms of God, in terms of a creator. These have their use, but all of these conceptions of source, they do carry, in terms of God, in terms of religious expressions, they do carry a certain amount of baggage. So the concept of source is a much more expansive concept. Now, the God worlds are effectively the structure that creation, the God worlds effectively describe the structure that manifests creation and brings it into being for us. So it's basically the geography of cosmos. We can ask ourselves, like we all have this desire to go home. We can ask ourselves, like, where is home? Or more specifically, where is here in relation to home? And how do we get there? So the God worlds describe the journey that we have to take in order to integrate our way back home. Now, there's a sequence of concepts through which the God worlds that illustrate the development of the God worlds. So we're going to start at the very beginning. We're going to go from source through a sequence of ideas. Now, a lot of the ideas you will have come across many times already in the context of cathara healing. It's useful to revisit them because they do form a sequence, and when we do follow the sequence, it creates a coherence in our understanding of the God worlds. So we're going to revisit some old concepts that we're familiar with from cathara healing for the purpose of building a sequence. We're not going to go through them word for word. Okay. Now, the first key concept to revisit is that of particle phasing. So, particle phasing is a very fundamental process in creation through which source manifests creation. An important point in relation to creation is that what is being created is primarily structure. So source is creating structure. It's projecting part of its consciousness, part of its aliveness into that structure. It's experiencing creation, effectively exploring its own nature from within that structure and integrating what it learns from that process back into the wholeness of itself. Now, so there is a very fundamental process in creation whereby source brings a focus of attention to a particular idea, and in doing so creates structure around that idea. So this first structure manifests as the first particle, which Ash has explained, has elaborated in considerable detail. So we have the first particle emerging within source. We have the vast field of source, the vast field of pure consciousness that underlies all of creation. Its total aliveness, it's totally free within itself, totally whole, totally integrated. Now, source brings focus, brings its attention to a point of focus, and in doing so creates structure around it. That structure manifests as the first particle. So these particle, they're the smallest units of energy substance. They're electrotonal units of consciousness, the consciousness of God, the consciousness of source. They are the building blocks of the morphogenetic fields, matter, and individuated consciousness identity. And they operate as minute, perpetual motion, fission-fusion generators. Now, there's a process involved in particle phasing. We have the original particle, which manifests as a neutral structure around the original concept in source. Now, this neutral structure, it replicates within itself. It creates an equal and replica of itself. That replica, in turn, phases. It polarizes into two equal and opposite expressions of the original idea. So we get two polarized expressions of the original idea. One manifests as a unit on what's referred to as the matter side of creation, another a unit on the antimatter side of creation. So we have these two polarized expressions of the original idea. One polarized, we say, in the male electrical direction, the other polarized, equal and opposite, female magnetic direction. two equal and opposite expressions of each other. Now, these two polarized expressions come into manifestation and they interact. And the interaction between these polarities is effectively what weaves the whole structure of creation. So the whole structure of creation emerges through the interaction of the sequential interaction that emerges through this process. So the two polarized units come into expression. They, once they have manifested in expression, they then turn around, come back into the neutral core in source. Now, yeah, okay. So a little bit of background music there, Sandy. Yeah. So if a particle and an antiparticle were to merge, were to come together, they would annihilate each other. Now, the original particle which manifests the particle and the particle particles, the original particle holds a buffer field. So you have competing phones. So the original particle unit holds a buffer field, and the two of these particles can merge back into this buffer field. And in this buffer field, the polarities are reintegrated in an orderly way, so that the consciousness that's inherent in the structures is brought back in an orderly way into harmony, into coherence, in the original neutral expression, and from there the structure dissolves and consciousness returns directly to source. So we have this process whereby structure comes into being. We have part of the process is a dissolution of the structure where the consciousness is released and flows back to source. So we have polarity as a natural part of the creative process. Polarity is a natural part of creation. It's only when polarity gets stuck, when the units of consciousness, the polarized units, cannot return to coherence, to harmony. It's only when polarity gets stuck that we have problems. Polarity in itself is natural, and it's when the polarity can return to integrity, to wholeness in source, and return to full integrity with source, then creation is working in its natural way. Now, the first particle, it creates the primary structure from which all the rest of the structures in creation emerge. Now, we have sequential phasing of the particle units. The first particle phases, projects structures, polarized structures, into manifestation, and they return to source. But there's sequential emergence of additional particle phasing, which projects additional particles into manifestation. Now, these particles, they phase sequentially, and they phase in relationship to each other. So we get a sequence of particle units phasing, creating a flash line sequence. This flash line in turn phases in relation to other flash lines. It creates particle grids, and these grids in turn phase in relation to other grids, and they create more complex three-dimensional structures. Now, as we will see in the subsequent diagram, 3 dimensions are a very key unit in the manifestation of creation. So we get a 3-dimensional structure emerging from the particle phasing units. Now, if we want to have an analogy for this process of particle phasing, a very good analogy to take, for example, is a television screen or a computer screen. If you look very closely at a television screen, you will see that there's a sequence of dots on the screen, and each dot has effectively three little pixels, and these flash on and off. They flash on and off in sequence in relation to each other to create a line, and the lines flash on and off in sequence to create a picture. Now, the sequential phasing of these units switching on and off, they create a pattern. That pattern emerges on the screen as a picture on your television screen, for example. And so the television screen can, for example, project something like, we say, a football match, horse racing, drama, and so on. So this very simple process of the phasing of units, very, very small units phasing on the screen, the sequential patterns that emerge from that can create various realities. They can create various projected realities, and they can create an infinite complexity of realities. Now, we talk about, we'll say, the hologram, the projected reality that we see in the world around us. And this is referred to as a hologram. And what is a hologram? A hologram is nothing more than a projected reality. And it is these fundamental processes that create the basic units, and it's the patterning of these units that creates the complexity of the projected realities that we perceive around us. So just as we have the dots flashing on the screen, creating very, very complex realities, very complex projected realities on television screens, we have a very similar process at work in the world around us. We have these, at a very fundamental level, we have this particle phasing, generating the patterns that we see in the external world around us. So we perceive and live in a three-dimensional projected reality, which we refer to as a hologram. Now, there's one other term that we come across here, and that's the term scalar. Like, what is a scalar wave, what are scalar grids? In very simple terms, in the world around us, we have waves. We're familiar with waves that flow in the world around us. We'll say we have waves flowing on the ocean, and these are horizontal waves. We can perceive of scalar waves as waves that flow vertically. They effectively flow, they're a process by means of which energy or consciousness moves vertically from source into manifestation, or more specifically, moves between dimensions. So scalar waves are effectively vertical waves that move energy, move consciousness between dimensions. Flash on in one dimension, flash off in another. Flash on and off in one dimension, moving energy between dimensions. Now, just coming back to this the 15-dimensional structure, which is absolutely key to the whole structure of creation, to the structure of the God worlds. So we have the fundamental process of particle phasing, generating structure within creation, and effectively generating the fundamental structures on which the God worlds are built. Now, these structures emerge in a particular form, and the core form is illustrated in this particular diagram. So what we have here is the dimensional structure of a universe. So on the outside we have the pure consciousness, the pure aliveness, the very free aliveness of source that's without structure, without form, that's totally integrated and that knows all of itself intimately. So at a very fundamental level, this source consciousness brings focus to a particular idea and creates structure around it. That structure initially manifests as vast fields of very, very pure sound, the primal sound fields. Now, these primal sound fields are very alive in themselves, they're very conscious, very aware, and they're capable of creation within themselves. So they bring focus of attention to a more concrete expression of the original idea, the original theme, and in doing so they create vast fields of very pure light, the primal light fields. Consciousness within those primal light fields further develops the original theme, the original idea, and creates more concrete structure which begins to manifest as a matter fields within creation. Now, there's a sequential structuring within creation which progresses from the primal sound through the primal light to the and begins to manifest the matter fields in creation. Now, within these individual fields, there's further subdivision, division into dimensional levels. Now, the dimensions are different. The dimensions basically are bands of units, of particle units, phasing, and they're differentiated by the different frequencies at which they phase. And the further feature of the particle phasing process is that the particles that manifest effectively spin. So there are different spin orientations for different particles. So within, we'd say, the matter fields, the full expanse of the matter fields, we have 12 subdivisions and effectively 12 dimensions. These 12 dimensions are grouped in groups of 3. So we have 4 groups of 3 dimensions, each forming a harmonic universe. Now, an important point in relation to this diagram is that the primal sound fields are non-dimensionalized. There's a fundamental difference here in the primal sound fields. They are much closer to source. They're much less separated from source than the rest of creation. So we don't get quite the same differentiation. We don't get quite the same solid structure in the primal sound fields as we do in the inner dimensional levels in creation. So we have 15 dimensions spanning the primal light fields and 4 harmonic universes within the 12-dimensional structure of the matter fields. We have the primal light fields, the pre-light liquid, pre-matter liquid light of the dimensions 10, 11, and 12. So we effectively have 5 harmonic universes, 5 also what are also referred to as density levels, each spanning 3 dimensions. And we have definite zones of separation between each of the harmonic universes. Now, there's a point worth making in relation to this diagram. We exist in harmonic universe in density 1 down here at the bottom, in dimensions 1, 2, and 3. Now, it's worth making the point that lower dimensional level is not the same as lower importance. All the dimensional levels are important. All are significant in their own way. It's like the notes on a musical scale. Each has its role, and each has its significance. So, for example, we can't have, we'd say, higher dimensional snobbery in our universe. We can't have, we'd say, dimension 15 looking down on lowly dimension 1. So, we'd say density 1 down here, we exist in physical bodies in density 1 at this level. Now, that has a significance. There's a great value in that. There's a great importance in that. We're not inferior because of this. And in fact, there is particular significance to our presence in density 1 at this level at this time. Now, the next level of structure within the God worlds, within the sequence through which creation emerges from source, is the Qatar grid. This is a core scalar template. It's a core structure on which all the other structures in creation are built. So when we think of source, when we think of the consciousness of source, the very, very free, unstructured, and integrated consciousness of source, projecting, creating structure and projecting consciousness into structure. So it has a particular intent, a particular design for what it manifests in creation. Now, that intent, that design, that core template is structured in a very orderly way. It's structured in a particular structure represented by the Qatar grid. The Qatar grid has 12 centers, each carrying the core coding, the core intent, the core template for what will manifest on the dimensional levels over 12 dimensions. So a Qatar grid has 12 Qatar centers representing 12 dimensions. Each center carries the design, the core intent, the core template for what will manifest at that dimensional level in creation. So everything that does manifest in creation has a design, and that design in its purest form is coded in a Qatar grid at a very foundation level in creation. So the Qatar centers are condensed scalar wave points that hold the core electrotonal geometrical mathematical program for dimensionalized structure. So they carry the core coding that will condition all the rest of manifest creation. So there are 12 Qatar centers, each holding the program for one dimension. The program for particle phasing and vibration oscillation for each dimensional frequency band is set in the corresponding Qatar center. The Qatar center set the template for each dimension, the ground consciousness within the holographic experience of manifestation. So it's a key structure, a key tool by means of which Source puts structure into creation, puts consciousness into manifestation, through which the bodies that house our consciousness in creation, this is where the core coding is stored. So we have the Katara centers, we have the lines linking the Katara centers, and these are key links between the centers that carry the information from one center to the next, effectively carrying the information from one dimensional level to another. Now, sorry a sec. Now, this diagram here illustrates the Katara grid in relation to the underlying dimensional structure. So we have the Katara grid that spans, we'd say, the 12 dimensions of the matter fields. Each Katara center is keyed to a dimensional level. The dimensional levels are represented by a particular frequency, and that frequency in turn is coded by a color. It isn't the case, for example, that dimension 1 is red. It's just that the color frequency of red resonates with the core frequency of dimension 1. So color is a key by means of which we can access the core frequencies of the dimensional levels. And it's using these diagrams to key to the particular frequencies of each dimensional band. So we have our Katara grid here spanning the 12 dimensions, the lower 12 dimensions within our local universe. This is referred to as the universal Katara grid, or the density Katara grid, spanning the 4 densities of the matter fields within our local universe. Now, what's new here is that we have an additional Katara grid spanning the primal light and the primal sound fields. Again, a 12-center Katara grid. The first 3 centers span the 3-dimensional levels of the primal light fields, and the upper 9 centers span 3 levels of the primal sound fields. Now, the primal sound fields are somewhat different in that they're non-dimensionalized. So we have a slightly different structure to the Katara grid at this level. We have less separation from source. The patterns, the standing waves are the structures, the particle units that manifest at this level do not form standing waves in the same way as they do within the 15 dimensions of the dimensional structure. Now, Ash differentiates these higher centers here. She describes them as domains, the 9 domains spanning the primal sound fields. And she also includes the 3 lower centers in the primal light fields as part of the domains as well. So we have the primary 9 domains spanning the primal sound fields. Now, this upper Katara grid is referred to as a cosmic Katara grid. 12 centers of the cosmic Katara grid. This is the first primal organization of particle-ized scalar grids that forms the 3 non-dimensional levels of the energy matrix and the antimatter or prematter density dimensions 13 to 15 of the time matrix. Now, the time matrix spans the 15-dimensional levels within our universe, the 5 density levels, 5 density levels each with 3 dimensions. Now, the time matrix represents the part of our universe where there are beginnings and endings. There's process, and time exists at this level. As we move out beyond this level into the non-dimensionalized primal sound fields, we're getting much closer to eternity. We're going beyond this level of creation at which we have specific beginnings and endings. And beyond that, then we're into the very pure consciousness, the integrated consciousness of Source. Now, the fundamental diagram, this diagram that underlies the dimensional structure, that describes the dimensional structure, in fact, is a very powerful diagram. There's a lot of information encoded in it. For example, the outer primal sound fields effectively represent a radial body around the dimensionalized levels, the dimensionalized layers within our local universe. Within the 15-dimensional structure, the dimensions are symmetrical around dimension 8. There's 7 dimensions above, 7 dimensions down. So dimension 8 represents a core point within the dimensional structure, the 15-level dimensional structure. Furthermore, there are many these diagrams, for example, this dimensional structure diagram. In fact, it's a very powerful diagram. There are layers of information in it, and it rewards constant study. Just coming back and revisiting it from time to time. You will get a new layer of information out of it each time. There's a lot of information coded in these diagrams. Also, the diagrams are effectively symbol codes in their own right. And working with the diagrams can greatly expand our consciousness around this area and can draw us into a more immediate connection to the realities that are represented by the diagrams. So the diagrams do have a value in their own right. Now we come back to our friend, the Katara grid. This diagram here illustrates a further structuring within the Katara grid. It illustrates the density levels, the harmonic universe density levels within the Katara grid structure. So we have density 1 spanning dimensions 1, 2, and 3, 2, 4, 5, and 6, and so on. Furthermore, the Katara centers, they actually represent, they have physical correspondences in our world. Also, everything that manifests in creation has its own Katara grid. For example, we have cosmic Katara grid spanning our local universe. We have a Katara grid spanning our solar system, a Katara grid underlying the structure of our planet, a Katara grid underlying the structure of our physical bodies. And each has this representation, the 4 density levels, each density level spanning 3 dimensions. This particular diagram illustrates the physical correspondences at the universal level. In other words, where the individual Katara centers are the individual signets, or what are also referred to as stargates, the correspondence from the Katara centers to the individual locations within our local universe. Sorry. Okay. Now we get into the God worlds proper. Okay, what we have over here now is the two Katara grids that we saw in an earlier diagram. We have the first Katara grid, the universal Katara grid, spanning the lower 12 dimensions of matter within our local universe, with its 4 density levels. Top density level 10, 11, and 12. Now, the upper Katara grid, spanning the primal sound and the primal light fields, again has its 12 centers. Now, the combination of 2 Katara grids spanning the primal sound, primal light, and the matter fields within our local universe, they represent, we'd say, the matter side of our universe. They represent the particum side of our universe. And just deriving from the particle phasing, wherever we have a matter expression, we have an equal and opposite expression in antimatter. We have a polar opposite. So this matter universe has an equal and opposite expression in antimatter. In other words, the particle universe has an equal and opposite particle twin. And so what is the relationship between the two? So this diagram brings the 2 sides of our universe into relationship so that we can see where everything fits together. So here we have the particum, the matter side of our universe, representing the primal sound, primal light, and the matter fields, the density Katara grid, and the primal Katara grid, of our matter side of the universe. So we have primal and density. We have the equivalent expression on the antimatter side, on the part decay side. We have a density or a universal Katara grid spanning 12 dimensions of the antimatter part decay side of our universe. That in turn has also has a Katara grid spanning its part decay, primal light and primal sound fields. So the 4 Katara grids come into relationship in the structure, in this particular structure. Now, there's a particular sequence, or there's a particular order to, or there's a very specific order to the structure. Now, if we take our particum universe, the matter fields within our particum universe, and examine the relationship to the antimatter fields on the part decay side, we can see that at a very fundamental level, there's a 90-degree shift. Now, this 90-degree shift goes back to the original part decay phasing process. The units on the matter side have one angle of rotation, and the units on the antimatter side have an angle of rotation that's oriented at 90 degrees to that. Now, we'll illustrate that in the next slide. We will illustrate that a little bit more clearly. So we have the 4 Katara grids that form our local universe, and they represent quadrants. They're referred to as quadrants within our universe. Now, at this level, we have an additional structure within our Katara grid. We have what are referred to as locks. Now, what are locks? Locks effectively arise between dimensional levels and between density levels, and they effectively hold the structure of creation in place. By analogy, for example, we have our chakras, and we have our star crystal seals between the chakras. Now, these star crystal seals serve a function in that they keep the energies of the chakras apart. So the locks serve a very important function in holding the structure in place. Once the structure comes into being, it comes into being on many different levels. The levels are separate, and they're held in separation through with the help of these locked structures. So the structure has to hold in place to allow further development, like the structure of creation. The structure of our local universe has to hold in place, for example, over a long period of time, spanning billions of years, to allow other life streams to emerge within the structure. So the structure is held in place by means of these lock features. So they're an integral part of the structure. They're very important, and they serve a very important role. They preserve the structure for as long as it's needed. Now, we do come to a point in creation where we need to transcend the separation that's enforced by the locks, and in that case, we effectively have to open the locks. So we have a lock then between each dimensional level, between each pair of dimensions. We say we have lock 1 between dimension 1 and 2, 2 between 2 and 3, and so on. So we have small dimensional locks between the dimensional levels that maintains separation between the dimensions. Between density levels, we also have larger density locks that maintain separation between the density levels within the Katara grids. So, for example, we have a large density lock between dimensions 3 and 4, enforcing separation between density 1 down here and density 2 up here. So we have a lock here between dimensions 3 and 4, and in bodily terms it corresponds to our Aumbi. We have a similar lock between dimensions 2 and 3, effectively between density levels 2 and 3, effectively between dimensions 6 and 7. We have a lock at the center, and this corresponds to the azure in our body. We have a higher lock up here between dimensions 3 and 4, which corresponds to the Rajna point in our body. And then we have two important locks at the top and the bottom. Lock 4 up here at dimension 12, between dimension 12 and 13. And then we have a 0-point lock at the bottom. Now at the bottom, the extremities of each of the Katara grids, each of these extremities has relationship to the primal sound fields that encompass the whole structure. Also, there's a window within the center of the Katara grids that represents a 0 point, the point of integration within the universal structure. Now, these 0-point locks have connection to the core lock structure at the center. Now, when we when we come across the concept of a lock, we also have the associated concept of a key, something that opens the lock. So the lock enforces separation, but there must be a process by means of which the lock is released. So there are core energy signatures that release the locks, that open the locks. There are core energy signatures, and these are encoded in symbol codes, and they're also encoded in sound patterns. So we have a sequence of symbol codes and a sequence of sound patterns that go with this lock structure, that release the lock structure when the time comes to go through the locks. So when we're working with these structures, when we're seeking to move up and down through the structures, we can work with the signates, the stargates, the Katara centers in the Katara grid structures, but we also have to work with the lock structures. We have to release the lock structures to allow passage between the signates so that we can progress up and down through the structure. So we have a sequence of codes to release the dimensional locks, sequence of codes to release the density locks, and so on up through the structure. Now, within the structure, the combination of 4 Katara grids is referred to as a Veka universe, and the 4 leaves, the 4 Katara grids, are referred to as quadrants. They're referred to as Veka quadrants. Now, we have a further level of structure within the Katara grids. We remember that we have different density levels within each Katara grid, each density spanning 3 dimensions. Each of these 3 dimensions, we say dimension 1, 2, and 3, that arise within density 1, for example, they represent a coherent world within creation. So we have a world, we'll say that spans dimensions 1, 2, and 3. The 3 dimensions have coherent relationship with each other. They create a 3-dimensional reality field that we can perceive as an integrated experience in creation. So we perceive, we operate within creation within a 3-dimensional world within the dimensional structure. So we live in density 1 in dimensions 1, 2, and 3. That represents a coherent experience of creation, a coherent world that we can perceive and live within the structure of creation. So we have a world corresponding to density 1. We also have a similar world corresponding to density 2, spanning dimensions 4, 5, and 6. Now, each of these worlds, these coherent stations of perception in creation, is referred to as a heaven. It represents a coherent, an integrated world that we perceive as a coherent reality. So each of these corresponds to a heaven world within the structure of creation. So we have density 1 representing a coherent heaven world, density 2 coherent and integrated heaven world, density 3 likewise. Furthermore, in the primal guitar grid, the primal primal fields in our universe, the guitar grid at that level also has its density levels. We have density, the top density level spanning the top 3 guitar centers, 12, 11, and 10, represented here by the acatic level of the sound fields. We have another density level spanning the polaric levels of the primal sound fields, and a third density level spanning the triadic level of the primal sound fields. So we have 3 coherent density levels, 3 coherent heaven worlds within the primal field. Now, when we look at this structure, we see that density 4 on the universal grid and the first density level of the cosmic grid, they actually share a lot in common. Of the 3 pairs of guitar centers, 2 of them are common, and only 1 pair is separate. So the guitar centers 12 and 13 share the same space. Guitar centers 9 and 15 share the same space. So there's much commonality, much sharing of space between the top density 4 in our universal grid and the first density level of the cosmic grid. So this represents, the combination of the 2 represents a coherent heaven world in its own right. So we have 3 discrete density levels in the lower universal grid, 3 discrete density levels in the higher primal grid, and then we have a common area between the 2, representing a 7th heaven world. So the combination of, we have, these are referred to as the lower heaven worlds, these as the higher heaven worlds. So we have 3.5 lower heaven worlds, 3.5 higher heaven worlds within on the particum side of our universe. Now we have a similar structure on the other side, on the particase side of our universe. We have 3 heaven worlds, 3 discrete heaven worlds in the lower structure, at the density level. 3 discrete heaven worlds, 3 lower heaven worlds in the universal guitar grid, 3 higher heaven worlds in the cosmic guitar grid, and then a common world between them, the 7th heaven. So we have 7 heaven worlds on the on the particase side, 7 heaven worlds on the particum side, comprising 14 heaven worlds within the 4 Vecca quadrants. Now, sorry, just take Now, there's an additional structure at the core of this Vecca universe, represented by what's referred to as the inner Eka world. Now, the inner Eka is again, it's a guitar grid. And it effectively represents, just as the particum represents the particum represents the female and what's referred to as the Ire side of our universe. The particate represents the male, the Mane side of our universe. We have a neutral core that synthesizes both polarities. And this neutral core is represented by what we refer to as the inner Eka. Now, the inner Eka has a guitar grid structure, just like all the other guitar grid structures. But an important point of detail here is that the Eka effectively has 24 guitar centers. What we have in the Eka is effectively 2 guitar grids overlaid on top of each other. So we have 24. We have a 24 guitar grid structure within the Eka. We have an upper 12 centers. Sorry, we have 12 centers in an upper guitar grid and 12 centers in the lower guitar grid. So we have 24 centers in all in the Eka, even though only 12 of them are illustrated in the diagram. Now, the the inner Eka guitar grid has a relationship to centers in the Vecca quadrants, centers in the Vecca guitar grids. There are definite gate alignments, signet alignments between Vecca signets and guitar centers in the Eka worlds. Now, we can regard the Eka as the core from which the quadrants, the Vecca quadrants, spiraled out into manifestation, and also it represents the core that they will all spiral back into as creation is being, as the structures in creation are being released. Now, we mentioned earlier that there's a correspondence between the 0-point locks at the extremities of the grids and the first point of creation, a 0 point at the core of the Vecca structure. Now, there's a very beautiful flow, an interchange of energy from these, through these lock structures. Now, there's a flow of energy from the 0 point at the core out through this 0 point lock. We can follow it in the diagram. As we said before, there's layer upon layer upon layer of detail in these diagrams, and they reward quite a lot of study over time. So we can trace the progression of these currents flowing between these centers. We have a flow of current from the 0 point at the core of the Vecca structure out through A, around through this 0 point lock, and back in to the 0 point core through point B up here. And this helps to build the structure of that Vecca quadrant. Now the current goes back in through the 0 point window, comes back out through a C point, goes from A to B, and then comes back out through, where's C? A, B, D, sorry, B, E, yeah. Goes around here, back in again, and then comes out through E to F, goes back in again, and then comes out through G and back in through H. So there's a very intricate pattern of energy flows between the 0 point at the core of the Eka and through the 0 point locks at the extremities of the Vecca quadrants. Okay, so we have our Vecca universe then, which has each side of the Vecca universe has 7 worlds, 7 heaven worlds, 7 particum heaven worlds, 7 particle heaven worlds, and the Eka core constitutes an additional heaven world to make up a total of 15 heaven worlds, 15 manifestation fields of the universal Vecca. Now, we have a time matrix spanning the particum side of our universe. We have time matrix spanning the parallel antimatter particle side of our universe. And the Eka constitutes an additional time matrix. So we have 3 time matrices within our local Vecca universe structure. So the universal Vecca holds 3 15-dimensional time matrices, 2 represented by the Vecca quadrants and 1 by the Eka inner God world. Now, we indicated that there is a correspondence, a very, very interesting correspondence between the structure of our Vecca universe and the fundamental process of particle phasing. So this is a more detailed diagram of the particle phasing process. It's from Katara to 3. So in this particular diagram, we have the particle unit shown here. We have the particle phases, creates a replica which polarizes, which creates two equal and opposite expressions, each of which carry the original theme that created the original particle. So we have a particle emerging and a particle expression of the original idea emerging. Now, these two units, the particle and the particle, form very specific angular alignments within the particle phasing process. The particle phasing process has a specific geometrical structure that's very accurate, very precise. Effectively, what happens is the original particle creates a replica that effectively emerges on the axis of the original particle unit. Then we get polarity on this axis, and then we get two equal and opposite expressions moving either side of that axis, the particle axis. So we get one that goes up to form the particle unit, and the other that goes that spreads out at another angle of 45 degrees to form a particle unit. So the two units, the polarized units, the particle and the particle units, they phase, they spread to an angle of separation of 90 degrees. So this is where the 90-degree orientation between the particle and the particle sides of our universe emerges. It goes back to the inherent structure of the particle phasing process. So we have a very, very neat correspondence to the structure of our Vecchi universe. Here we have the particle, which has relationship to the particle grids, the particle guitar grid within our universal structure. We have the parallel particle side at a 90-degree angle to that. So, and then we have the neutral core from which both emerge at a 45-degree angle between the two. And this is the Eka. This corresponds to the Eka axis. So we have our particle axis, our matter, the axis of our matter universe. We have the axis of our parallel antimatter universe, and we have the Eka axis at a 45-degree angle between them. So there's a very, very beautiful correspondence to the structure of our Vecchi universe. Now, furthermore, there is the particles that emerge are rotating. The particle unit rotates clockwise. The particle unit counterclockwise. Now, see how we're doing for. Okay. So there's a further feature of this process, and that is that the particle phasing process is dynamic. What we're looking at here is a snapshot where the structure is at maximum expansion. The two units, the two polarized units, they come out to their maximum expansion. Then, once they've passed through their maximum expansion, they begin to phase back together again. So the particle unit begins to come back. The particle unit begins to come back. The two polarized units come into relationship with each other, and they come into relationship with each other within a buffer field held by the neutral parent particle unit. They come into harmonious relationship. They integrate their energy, and they form what's a harmonized unit. In other words, we can visualize this circle coming down at this axis, this circle coming up onto this axis, the two overlaying each other to form two circles in a bivecca arrangement. So, and then the two harmonized, the particles harmonize their polarities, and then the combined unit returns back into integrity within the core particle neutral expression. So yeah, go ahead.
Questions?
Yeah.
The particle has no circulation, right? I mean, because it's neutral.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And the second question is, does it go back to particle before it goes back to bivecca and then trivecca?
Yeah.
Okay.
There's a sequence. The particle goes to bivecca, which separates out to trivecca, which in turn separates out to the maximum spread of 90 degree spread between the units. When the units are at 2 by 30 degrees, at 60 degrees separation, you have a trivecca structure. and then they move out to 2 by 45 degrees and 90 degrees separation for maximum extent, the maximum projection into manifestation, then come back, integrate back into the particle, and the particle unit itself then dissolves, or the particle unit is capable of going back to source.
Cool.
Yeah. Yeah. So, so just coming back to the structure of our Vecchi universe, what we're looking at here is a snapshot. The structure is dynamic; it's moving. So, for example, these quadrants, these Vecchi quadrants, are phasing, just like the particle unit is phasing. So these Vecchi quadrants are phasing. And Ash has a number of diagrams where she illustrates the phasing and the phasing sequence, and she puts particular dates and when these grids overlay each other and when they pass through each other. So, for example, the particum, our matter universe, phases into relationship with our antimatter equivalent. The two of them come together on the x-axis and they integrate. Now, this is something that happened during the process of hetero and hetelon. Right, so this structure is dynamic, it's phasing. So the quadrants are in motion. The particum and the particate quadrants come together, and likewise on the primal side, the primal quadrants come together, come into relationship with each other, and then they integrate and then move back into the Eke core. They come onto the Eke axis alignment. So this phasing together of the two quadrants is something that happened recently. It happened during the time of hetero and hetelon. So we came into alignment, direct alignment with the Eke axis, and because of that alignment, we were able to draw the heliothallic currents from the Eke universe vertically. Before hetero, if you remember, we were drawing the heliothallic currents in on a 45-degree angle. Because we still held a 45-degree displacement from the Eke axis at that point. During the hetero and hetelon, we successively came into alignment with the Eke axis, first on the electrical side, second then on the magnetic side. We came into alignment with the Eke axis by means of which we were able to draw heliothallic currents vertically down our central vertical column. So the structure is dynamic, it's phasing. There's tremendous order, tremendous detail, and it's a very, very beautiful structure. Okay. Now, this Vecchi universe it exists within a higher level structure again. So we have the four Vecchi quadrants with their Eke core, the Eke inner world, constituting a Vecchi universe. Now, the whole structure of the Vecchi universe is held within a larger Katara grid, which is referred to as the Akasha level. So, Akasha then holds one Vecchi, which has 7 higher heavens on the primal side, 7 lower heavens on the universal or the matter side, 1 Eke lower God world at the core. Now, at the Akasha level, we have the Akasha has relationship to the Eke core. And the combination of the Akasha and the Eke core constitutes an additional 7 God worlds. So we have 7 middle God worlds. So when we combine the 15 God worlds within the Eke universe itself with the additional 7 deriving from the Akasha structure, we end up with a total of 22 worlds within an Akasha structure. The Akasha structure is referred to as a corridor, the Akasha corridor, and at the Akasha level, we refer to the heaven worlds as middle God worlds. Yeah. Okay, so we have our Vecchi universe. The Vecchi universe has 15 discrete heaven worlds. The heaven worlds within the Vecchi we have 15 heaven worlds within the Veka. Now we have the outer Akasha has a relationship to the inner Eka, and that generates a further 7 worlds, 7 discrete worlds. Just as we had 7 worlds in the 2 Katara grids of, we'd say, the particle side of our universe, we have another 7 heaven worlds between the Akasha and the Eka structured core. So the additional 7, when we add it to the 15 within the Veka universe, we get a total of 22 discrete worlds within the composite Eka structure. Okay? Yeah? Yeah. Now, at this level here, we have we have an additional sequence of locks. We have our Akasha corridor density locks represented by C. So we have our Akasha corridor density locks between each density level within the Akasha Katara grid, within the Akasha structure. So between dimensions 1, 2, and 3, centers 1, 2, and 3 of the Akasha, we have a very important lock structure. A similar one between between 6 and 7, it's right at the center. C2, right at the center of the Akasha Eka structure. C3 up here between Akasha centers 9 and 10, and then C4 at the very top. And again, we have a 0-point lock at the very bottom. Okay. Now, so at this stage, what we have is we have structure embedded within structure. We have an unfolding structure, and we're following the pattern of the structure up through the God worlds, up through the primary structures in creation. Now, what we have here is we have our Akasha corridor with its Veka universe and inner Eka core, or containing its Veka universe and inner Eka core. Now, this Akasha structure has relationship to another 3 similar Akasha structures. They effectively form quadrants within a higher level structure that's referred to as the Akasha A. So we have 4 Akasha corridors coming into relationship with each other, effectively forming the quadrants of a higher level structure, which we describe as an Akasha A spectra. So this is referred to as a higher God world. The Akasha is referred to as the middle God world, or houses middle God worlds, and then the Veka universe itself has the lower God worlds. Yeah?
Do we know anything about the other 3?
We do. Sorry. Just a second. Actually, it's probably clearer in a further diagram area, but Ash is actually describing, in relation to the trimatrix, the crystal river current and the trimatrix wars, she's actually describing the location of some of those other matrices. One of them is located within our Akasha A. I won't go into it in too much detail now because I don't want to, or like Ash covers it in a fair bit of detail. But there is a diagram further on where we can see where we are located in relationship to this structure. And Ash is actually pointing out in that diagram, when she's using the diagram in the recent workshops, she's actually pointing out the specific location of these other Akashas that we're dealing with in relation to the trimatrix wars and the crystal river currents. So it'll be a little bit clearer further down the road. Okay, so we have 4 Akasha middle God world corridors clustered to form 1 Akasha higher God world spectra. Now, this spectra has 4 Akashas, 4 Akasha corridors, each with 22 worlds. So the aggregate is, we have 88 worlds between the 4 Akasha corridors. Now, we have an additional 8 between we have these Akasha corridors forming the quadrants within a higher level structure. This higher level structure is represented by its own inner Eka core and its own outer Akasha superstructure that holds the whole structure in place. So between the inner Eka core of the Akasha A and the outer Eka structure, the outer Akasha structure that holds the whole thing in place, we have an additional 8 God worlds. We have 1 in the Eka core and 7 between the Akasha, the outer Akasha, and the inner Eka. So when we take the 22 worlds in the Akashas, 22 worlds in each Akasha by 4, making up 88, plus an additional 1 in the Eka core, plus 7 between the outer Akasha and the inner Eka core, we get a total, we get 88 plus 8, we get 96 manifestation, we get 96 heaven worlds, 96 discrete manifestation fields within one Akasha A. Yeah? Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So you have the outer Akasha. Now the inner Eka core is represented by 2 Katara grids. Yeah. So
Now, is that on the same axis then?
they're not on the 2 Katara grids in the Eka core overlay each other.
Kind of a different axis?
No, actually, Ash describes them as opposite sides of a dinner plate.
So one's up, the other's down?
I don't know the exact orientation of the gate, the specific gate lines between the 2 sides.
Right, is that the primal and the density?
Yeah, it would correspond to primal and density. Yeah. So we do have these, this double Eka structure at the core. And so we do have the outer Akasha's relationship to the Eka structure. So it effectively has something like a double Katara grid relationship. And between the 2, we have, yeah, that's where we get 7. Yeah, at the Akasha level. Yeah, okay. So we have a total, we have 1 from the Eka core itself, and then another 7 between the outer Akasha and the inner Eka core. So that makes up 8. We add it to the 88, and we get to 96. So it adds up. Yeah. Okay, so we have our Akasha structure. It effectively replicates the structure that we've seen already. We've explored in a bit of detail in relation to the Vecchi universe, but effectively is the same structure replicated at a higher level. Okay. So we have our time matrices. The time matrices multiply up on a similar basis. We have our seals, our locks, which maintain separation within the structure. So at this level, we have our spectra, our spectra locks, Akasha A density seals. They're represented by S seals. Now, we'd mentioned that there are specific keys to release these locks, to open the locks, to allow passage between the dimensional levels and passage between the density levels within the cosmic structure. Now, at the Vecchi universe level, we have the Vecchi codes. The Vecchi codes are the keys that open the locks that allow progression between the levels of the Vecchi universal structure. So the Vecchi codes are effectively the keys to the locks at the Vecchi universe level. We have Eka codes which have a similar function in the Eka level. The Eka codes open the locks on the seals within the Eka universe, and they allow passage into and through the Eka worlds. At this level here, we have scepter codes. Scepter codes operate. They carry the frequency pattern, the sound and the sound tones that allow us to open these scepter locks to allow progression up through this structure. Progression up or progression, or we can come in and out through the structure using these codes. We use these codes to come in, and we can use the codes to go back out again. So we have scepter codes, and the next. Oops. Oh, sorry. move out of this. Yeah. Okay, we'll go to the next level. We have Rouchet. We have locks. At the next level up again, we have another set of locks. They're referred to as the Rouchet density locks, and we use the Rouchet codes to work with these particular locks. Now, here we have, again, the same structure, the very same structure is replicated again. So we have the Akasha spectra from the previous diagram has relationship to 3 other similar Akasha spectra. It comes into relationship with 3 others. The 4 structures, the 4 Akasha spectral structures, form quadrants within a larger structure. This larger structure has its own inner Eka core and its own outer Akasha superstructure that holds the whole structure in place. So this outer Akasha is referred to as the Akasha Aya level in creation. So we have this very, very, very large superstructure, this very large Akasha at a very high level in creation that holds the very large scale structure of our universe in place. Now again, the number of discrete worlds, the number of discrete stations of perception within our universe multiply up on a similar basis as before. So we get the worlds, the God worlds multiplying up. We get the time matrices multiplying up, just as we did before. So we end up with quite a large number of, if we want to do the math, we end up with quite a large number of God worlds and time matrices within the large structure of creation. Now, just one feature in relation to the locks at this level, you can see that the locks have a particular orientation. There are 2 arrows pointing up, 2 arrows pointing down. This is a 0-point Rouchet lock. And then at the center, we have a composite lock that has both orientations. The Rouchet density lock at center to, the Rouchet lock 2 at the center has this composite structure.
So we have Veka, Eka.
Yeah, Akasha,
And
then Akasha A.
oh,
Yeah,
locks
yeah.
as well.
Yeah.
I mean, in codes as well.
In codes as well, yeah. So the sequence of structure is Veka, Eka, Akasha. And then we move from the Akasha up into the Akasha A, from the Akasha, into the Akasha A, and then up into the Akasha Aya. This is the Akasha Aya level.
So they're called the Rouchet locks?
Yeah, and the Rouchet codes. Yeah, they're referred to as the Rouchet density locks, and the associated codes are the Rouchet codes. Now, we come into, we're getting to the top levels of the God worlds at this point, and we're coming into, we're coming much closer to the source at this point. We're much closer to the original creation, the original fields of creation at this point. Now, we had mentioned that underlying the whole process of creation, you have this particle phasing process. This particle phasing process generates an original particle field, which is basically neutral in nature, tripolar or omnipolar. It's not polarized. It synthesizes the polarities. So this is represented by what's referred to as the Manu current, the Manu field in creation. Now that in turn creates a replica which polarizes, creates a male Mane expression and a female Ire expression. So we begin to see the original fields that emerge within creation in terms of a Manu field, which in turn encompasses a Mane and an Ire field. And so we're beginning to see the emergence of the original fields in creation, the emergence of the original currents in creation. Now, the composite or the aggregate of these three fields is referred to as the unicide, the point of all union, the point of integrity of these fields. the point which integrates them. Now, the consciousness of source comes into the three primal fields of the Manu, Mane, and Ire fields, and it brings within these fields its focus of attention to 12 specific points of consciousness, and these create the Katara grids, the original Katara grids. So we have the original large Katara grid spanning the Manu fields, and a smaller Katara grid at the center spanning the Ire fields. The larger Katara grid, the larger outer Katara grid is referred to as the Christos, and the inner one as the Kristalla. Now, we're coming to, it's just the air conditioning. Yeah, there's quite a lot of structure at this level in creation. And the structure is actually encoded in very precise language, that Shanna originally brought out. And I think it's worthwhile at this point, just to read some of the original structure. I think it should be in your handouts, but we'll just go through the sequence because there's a very, very powerful sequence to the unfolding of events at this level. So we have the cosmic force, the Unisai divine cosmic trinity creates the Manu, Ire, and Mane currents. So the framework of manifest creation begins with God's source, downstepping within itself the divine cosmic trinity of the Unisai, the point of all union, which is formed as God's source first manifests itself as the cosmic divine trinity of eternal God force identity, creating within itself the Manu, effectively the first particle consciousness unit, the divine spirit womb, cosmic void, eternal still point. Also, the Ire, first particum, pre-sound vibration unit, divine mother creation seed, that's basically contracting in nature, it receives consciousness force, and the Mane, the first particle pre-light vibration unit, effectively the divine father creation spark that expands, it's expanding, transmitting consciousness force, and the eternal God force consciousness fields, and together these form the Unisai, the living cosmic thought crystal within which all manifestation occurs. So what that's effectively describing is the emergence of the within the original particle phasing process, is describing the emergence of the three primal fields in creation, which manifest the three primal currents in creation, the Manu, Mane, and Ire. The next level of emergence, the cosmic Christos, the divine blueprint Katara, the Kristalla, the Christos. Now, the divine blueprint Katara, the Christos, Kristalla creation emerges within the Unisai, within the integrity of the original primal fields, as designed by God, following a specific base 12 eternal creation program of mathematical, geometrical interrelationships of consciousness, which is called the Katara template, divine blueprint, or the Katara grid. So this is the emergence of the Katara grid. Within the Unisai Manu force field, the Ire and Mane force fields each create a Katara grid that's formed upon 12 specific points of conscious attention, expressed as 12 fixed or standing points of vibration. The two 12-point Katara grids of Mane and Ire together form the base 12, 24-point cosmic Katara grid divine blueprint. The word Katara expresses the divine intention God's source holds in creation of the Unisai, Ka, the light emanation or expression, Ta, sound vibration or intention, Ra, the one spirit. So we have the one spirit of God intending to express his creation. The Ire Katara grid is called the Kristalla, meaning God intends. The Mane Katara grid is called the Christos, meaning God expresses. So here we have we have the Unisai point of all union, the emergence of the original primal fields from the original process of particle phasing, the emergence of the original primal fields. A further elaboration of structure within those primal fields manifests the primary Katara grids, the large crystals and the smaller crystalla. So here we have a polarity that's manifesting. We have a polarity in terms of Mane-Ire that's manifesting these Katara grid structures, and all of the other structures in creation emerge from the interaction of those two. So those two polarities interacting weave the fabric of creation that emerges through the subsequent levels of the structure. Next, we come to the development of the Rouchet scepter pillars, another very important structure within the creation process within the God worlds. Now, we have cosmic clock downstepping the 12 Rouchet scepter pillars. Through vibrational interaction of consciousness between the cosmic Katara grid, the Mane, Ire, and Mane God forces of the Unisai recreate the original creation process of vibration downstepping, by which the divine cosmic trinity perpetually individuates itself within the consciousness of God's source. Following the impetus to create as imbued by the original God source creation intention, the Manu, Ire, Mane God forces intertwine a portion of their consciousness and downstep the vibrations of the cosmic Katara grid 3 times to form a set of 12 layered points of vibration, fixed in a circular organization within the cosmic Katara grid templates. And each of these points forms a singular, scalar, standing, columnar wave or pillar, a pillar of vibration called a seer within the Unisai, a pillar of sound and light within the core of the Unisai. Now, the set of 12 cosmic seer standing waves are called the 12 Rouchet scepter pillars, which together formed the first scalar wave field that becomes the core God world of creation. So we have the emergence of the primal fields within creation, the emergence of the primal Katara grids in creation, the Christos and the Crystalla. The next level of structure to emerge is the emergence of the Rouchet pillars within creation. Now, there's a particular sequence in which these unfolds. It's described there as a 3-stage downstepping. So we have at the core, we have at the very core of the creation structure, we have the consciousness of the Manu, Mane, and Ire fields. They intertwine a portion of their consciousness and within the core, and they elaborate 12 points of structure within the structure of creation at this level. So we have the point of focus at the core. This first of all polarizes and creates 2 expressions. They emerge as the 12 and the 6 points on the Rouchet pattern. So we have the core polarizes, downsteps, creates a 12 and a 6 point within the Rouchet pattern. This next, the next stage of downstepping is that this pattern replicates by creates a replica of itself at 90 degrees, equivalent to the particum, partic angle of alignment. So at this level we have the emergence of the 3 and the 9. So we have the core at the center of the 13 point, manifesting the 12 and the 6. That generates the 3 and the 9. The 3 and the 9, each of these 4 points then polarize in turn to create equal and opposite expressions, which manifest as the remaining 8 points, the outer points in the Rouchet pattern. So we have this 3-stage downstepping. Now, this particular sequence of emergence is of interest, for example, in relation to the clock diagrams, the clock patterns. For example, we'll say we all exist. We'll say we exist here as a personality. We exist as part of a soul group of 12 personalities. Now, there's a replication by 12 as you go up and down through the cosmic structure. Now, within our soul family, we have 12 individual expressions of that particular soul, 12 personalities. Now, these are aligned in clock arrangement, and their particular positions on that clock diagram of significance. So, for example, the primal positions on the clock diagram are 12 and 6. They're the most powerful expressions within the particular group of 12. The 3, 6, 9, and 12 form the 4 cardinal points of the clock. They form the core of the Ruche, the 4 cardinal points of the clock. So they have particular significance in relation to the orientation of the personalities within the soul group. So the sequence of emergence of this Ruche pattern has significance for the positions we see on the various clock diagrams that we come across. Now, the 12 points that form the Ruche pattern, they polarize Mane and Ire. The Mane pattern, the Mane points are represented by the lighter color here, the Ire points by the solid color. So the Mane points, each of the points on the Ruche pattern forms a column of sound and light, a standing column of sound and light. They are the original Ruche pillars. Now, each of these effectively forms a shield, and this is spinning. The Mane, the Ruche positions are spinning in a clockwise direction. The Ire positions are spinning in a counterclockwise direction. And there is significance to the alignment of these and their spin directions. Now, these standing waves of very pure sound and light, they in turn interact. They interact with the core, and they bring out another level of structure within the creation process. So that's what we're coming to now. Okay, so we have cosmic heart and fire, the Manu window, and the Eka eternal flame. Following the cosmic Katara grid program, the 12 Ruche scepter pillars vibrationally interact within the unipsi, within the composite field, creating an opening called the Manu window, manifestation point, or 0 point at the center points of the Ire and Mane Katara grids. At the center of the Christos and the Kristalla, we have the emergence of the Manu window. Now, they create 0 point at the center points of the Ire and Mane Katara grids, which links the center of the Ruche scepter circle directly into the Manu force field of first creation and the living eternal consciousness field of God's source. The 12 Ruche scepter pillars interact with the Manu field, causing a quantity of the Manu force consciousness called the Amareya wave pillar, or Eka Manu eternal flame, to emerge through the Manu window to form a 13th scepter, or pillar, at the center of the Ruche circle. Through the Manu window, the Amareya wave circulates pulses of living God consciousness between God's source and the eternal God force consciousness fields of the unipsi, setting in perpetual motion the processes of eternal life creation. The Amareya wave, Eka Manu eternal flame, is known as the heart of God, as it circulates pulses of living God consciousness, the eternal life stream, perpetually into and out of manifestation. So we have the Manu window emerging at the core. We have the Ruche pillars beginning to interact with the Manu window and creating the next level of structure, which is referred to as the cosmic arcs, the 12 Ruche scepter arcs, and the cosmic shield. Through vibrational interaction with the Amareya wave pillar, Eka Manu flame, the 12 Ruche scepter pillar columnar waves bend toward the Ruche center to form 12 arcs of consciousness, 6 Ire force arcs, 6 Mane force arcs, that are collectively called the 12 Ruche scepter arcs. The Ire and Mane force arcs pass through the Manu window at the Ruche center, blending and replicating their vibrational content within the Eka Manu flame to form 12 rotating scalar standing columnar wave discs of bipolar Ire Mane consciousness, called the 12 Rouchet scepter shields, which are linked together through a central tripolar shield wave disk composed of blended Manu-Ire-Mane force called the cosmic shield of Amorea that forms within the central Eka-Manu flame. So we have the 12 scepter shields, and we have the Manu window and the Amorea shield at the core. Now, each of the 12 Rouchet scepter shields forms a living circuit of counter-rotating God force, the Ire scalar standing waves forming a counterclockwise rotating scalar field that receives God force consciousness from the Rouchet and Unisci field and contracts it back to God source through the Manu window for demanifestation. The Mane scalar standing waves forming a clockwise rotating scalar field that transmits new pulses of God force from the Manu window, expands it into the Unisci and Rouchet shields for manifestation. The synchronized rotation of the 12 counter-rotating Rouchet scepter shields, held perpetually together through the central shield of Amorea, brings into being the first expression of God force consciousness as electromagnetic force, the living primal life force current from which all manifest worlds emerge. So effectively what we have at this point, we have the 12 Rouchet scepter pillars, we have the Manu window at the core. Now the pillars begin to arc towards and away from the center. They begin to move, to interact with the center, creating waves of current that flow into and out of the center. Now it's represented in this diagram at the bottom. We have the 12 Rouchet scepter arcs. So we have the 12 Rouchet points, 6 Mane, 6 Ire, each forming a shield. And the shields are the Mane ones rotating clockwise, Ire ones rotating counterclockwise. Now, each opposite pair of Rouchet pillars has opposite polarity. If we look at, we'll say, the opposition of the pairs of Rouchet pillars, we can see that they form Ire-Mane pairs. Now, each pillar interacts with the center, creates a circulation of current, vast arcs of current that circulate through the pillar into the core, out through the opposite point, back through the core, and back through the other pillar. So it's represented by this diagram here, where we have this arc of current flowing through the scepter pillar, through the Manu window, through the opposite scepter pillar. So we have this vast circulation of current through the scepter pillars. So we have this intricate interaction between the pillars and the core, creating these arcs of current that are flowing between the pillars and the core. So each pair of opposite pillars forms a pair of scepter arcs that interact with the core and that cause these currents to flow. And these currents in turn manifest another level of order within the structure of creation. So the flow of these currents begins to manifest what's referred to as cosmic Merkaba, the flow of life force current into and out of creation. So what we're coming to now is the very high level flow of very, very pure primal life force current, where it emerges within the source process of creation, how it structures Merkaba and the flow of primal life force current at all the lower levels in creation. So cosmic Merkaba, the Amorea, Akasha, and Veka Merkaba fields. The perpetual rotation of the 12 Rouchet scepter shields and the Amorea shield create a perpetual motion living circulatory system of God force as electromagnetic current that forms 12 smaller bipolar Rouchet scepter currents that are intertwined through the central tripolar current of the Amorea shields. As the scepter shields rotate around the axis of the rotating central Amareya shield, the Eka-Manu flame separates the counterclockwise rotating or contracting Ire currents from the clockwise rotating or expanding Mane currents, as the Amareya shield holds the two polarized currents in direct relationship with each other, forming two counter-rotating spirals of polarized Ire and Mane God force current within the Eka-Manu flame, and these are held together and interwoven through the Amareya shield. The Ire spiral contracts God force in from the Eka-Manu flame, sending it towards the center point Manu window, creating a negative electrical current, which creates the effect of magnetic force and gravity. And at the same time, the Mane spiral expands God force from the center point and Eka-Manu flame, creating a positive electrical current. The synchronized perpetual rotation of the Ire and Mane currents creates the first cosmic Merkaba field, the Amareya Merkaba. Merkaba means God force movement, Ka meaning God force expression, Ba meaning body or vehicle. So this is the first emergence of Merkaba structure within the creation process. The primary Merkaba that emerges within the core creation process is this Amareya Merkaba. The Amareya Merkaba is built upon the base 12 24-point mathematical program of the cosmic Katara grid, which contains the 12 points of the slower vibrating Ire crystallic Katara grid within the core, and the 12-point Katara grid form the geometrical shape of a 12-point, 12-plane counterclockwise rotating Merkaba scalar wave spiral, the bottom spiral of the Merkaba field. So the crystal at the core forms the magnetic base spiral for this very, very large cosmic Merkaba, and the larger Mane Christos forms the upper electrical spiral. The counter-rotation of the two spirals manifests the original expression of Katara within cosmic structure. So together the Ire and Mane Merkaba spirals create the 24-point, 24-plane, base 48 form of the singular cosmic Amareya Merkaba field. The intricate procedures by which the Amareya Merkaba field is formed are replicated and repeated by the God force currents through several stages of downstepping to create within the first Merkaba field the smaller Merkaba field or living energy consciousness fields, within which a multitude of electromagnetic manifestation domains form. Now, each 12-point Katara grid that forms one of the two cosmic Katara grids through which the 24-point, 24-plane cosmic Amareya Merkaba field is created, it replicates, as we've seen before, polarizes and vibrationally downsteps to form a pair of smaller base 12 Katara grids, each of which in turn form a 6-point, 6-plane Merkaba spiral, which together form a 12-point, 12-plane base 24, a Kasha-level Merkaba field. So from the first downstep, 124-point, 24-plane base 48 Amareya Merkaba forms two 12-point, 12-plane base 24 Ikasha Merkaba fields. At the next level, the second downstep, the two Ikasha Merkaba fields in turn form four 6-point, 6-plane base 12 bi-Veka Merkaba fields. And then the next level of downstep again, each of those in turn on the third downstep forms four bi-Veka Merkaba fields. On the third downstep, the four bi-Veka Merkaba fields form 8 3-point, 3-plane base 6 polarized Merkaba spirals called Veka Merkaba spirals. So this is the level of Merkaba that we see in our, or that we encounter in, we say, the first meeting Merkaba spirals in the Katara 1 material. We see the two pyramid structures, each with 3 sides. So we have the very high level, the interaction of the Ire and Mane, the Ire and Mane, the circulation, the Rouchet arcs create a circulation of current within the cosmic structure. The Katara grids, the Christos and Crystalla, they in turn, there's a motion associated with those, and this motion creates the first expression of Merkaba. The combination of the two Katara grids, they manifest a large, the Amareya Merkaba field between them. The upper Katara grid manifests the electrical spiral of the Amareya Merkaba, and the Crystalla manifests the magnetic lower spiral of the Amareya Merkaba. Now, this Merkaba at this level downsteps through a sequence. The Merkaba spirals split, just as we saw the Katara grids moving down through a sequence of smaller structures. The Merkaba spiral, the Merkaba structure, Merkaba activity, in turn splits, forming a number of smaller expressions of the original Merkaba. So you have the 24-point Merkaba, the 12 and the 12, splitting to form 12-point Merkaba, splitting to form 6-point, splitting to form 3-point Merkaba fields. And at the 3-point Merkaba field level, we're down into the level of Merkaba that we see in our local universe. We're down into the Vecca Merkaba spirals that we see in the original Merkaba diagrams in Katara 1. So when we get to Akasha grid, when at the high level of Merkaba activity, where the Merkaba spirals are based on Katara grids, we have a Merkaba spiral using the Katara grid as a base. So it has 6 faces, and the smaller Katara grid at the center, it forms a Merkaba spiral. And the interaction of those two Merkaba spirals based on the Katara grid rather than based on a triangle, this creates a more sophisticated form of Merkaba that's referred to as a crux and seta Merkaba. So where we get Merkaba fields, where we get Merkaba spirals rotating in relation to each other, the counter-rotation of the two Merkaba spirals creates a common space at the core. In other words, the point of intersection at the core of the Merkaba spirals creates a space, creates an oval space that constitutes the radial body, a radial body at the core of the Merkaba. So where we have Merkaba spirals in motion, the space at the core of the Merkaba spirals generates a radial body, and that creates another level of structure within the cosmic process. So now we come to, you'll be glad to hear, the final level of structure within this process. It's quite intricate, and it's worth going through it. And it's worth going through the original language that Ash uses. So from the Merkaba activity within the cosmic structure, we next move to the radial bodies, the God cells, and the cosmic egg. So the cosmic egg, cosmic radial bodies, and 15 God cells of the God seed. Now, through the perpetual spin of the counter-rotating electromagnetic God force currents within the cosmic Amareya Merkaba field, the 15 cosmic spheres, or 15 God cells of the cosmic God seed, are formed. The force and counterforce of the Ire and Mane Merkaba spirals creates within the center of the Merkaba field, which is within the Ekemanu flame at the Rushe center, a perfectly balanced spinning electromagnetic force field in the shape of an elliptical sphere that is called the form constant. It's basically an egg structure at the core of the Merkaba spirals. So this is an electrostatic, cosmic, holographic radial body. This is the emergence of the radial bodies. Formation of the first God cell sphere within the Amareya Merkaba sets in simultaneous motion the Merkabic downstepping process, which downsteps, creating within the center of its Merkaba field another holographic radial body, God cell. So the first downstep creates 2 additional God cells. The second downstep creates another 4 God cells. The third downstep step creates the last 8 God cells for a total of 14 God cell radial bodies. And these are expanded within the original first God cell, the cell of Amareya, which is known as the 15th cell. So We have the 15 cell on the outside. We have the 6 inner cells, 6 outer cells. We have the cell at the core. We have an outer cell that encompasses the cluster. We have 6 at the center plus the core one, which forms 7. And then we have an outer cell that encompasses all of those. Then we have 6 outer cells. We have 7 at the center plus the one that encompasses is 8. Then we have the 6 outer cells making up 14. And then we have the outer cell that encompasses all of those to make up 15, the 15 God cells. And they're shown as circles here, but they're basically egg-shaped, and they're probably more accurately represented by the acacia teardrop shape. Okay. Now, through down steps 1 and 2, God cells 2 and 6 form within the first cell, Amareya radial body, within the Eka Manu flame, Manu window, Ruche center point, or 0 point. So they create the core or yolk of the cosmic egg. The final 8 God cells form from the Eka Manu flame 0 point within the center of the Amareya radial body yolk, expanding the cluster of the first 7 yolk cells outward to become the cosmic egg, as the last 8 cells become the yolk at the center of the Amareya radial body. The first 7 cells expand to become the last 7 cells, as the original last 8 cells emerge from the 0 point center to expand the original first 7 cells into externalization. So through the intricate working of the Merkabic holographic radial bodies and the Manu, Ire, Mane, divine trinity of God force currents, the first 15 eternal God cells come into being within the Eka Manu eternal flame, causing the Eka Manu flame scalar columnar standing wave to expand outward from within itself, forming a stationary scalar spherical standing wave of Manu God force called the cosmic Amareya crystal, a cosmic thought crystal, radial body, stationary scalar standing wave in the shape of an elliptical sphere or cosmic egg surrounding perpetual creation that takes place within its core. Now, in fulfillment of the base 12 eternal life mathematical geometrical creation program held within the cosmic Christos divine blueprint, the process of 6 down steps that formed the original cosmic egg is repeated once more within the Amareya crystal, forming a total of 12 down steps through which the microcosmic replica of the cosmic God seed forms a universal God seed with 15 smaller universal cells that form the structure of 15-dimensional time matrix systems within the God worlds formed through the cosmic God seed. So the cosmic God seed forms the Akasha Eya in down step 1, the Akasha A down step 2, and the Akasha core in down step 3, the higher and middle God worlds, and the universal God seed in turn down steps through stages 7 and 12 forms the cluster of 7 higher and 7 lower heavens of the lower God world universal Veka time matrix systems. So we have the emergence of the Merkab activity generating the radial body, which in turn generates the cells. And these cells in turn manifest, the downstepping of these cells creates the core seed that creates the core seeds for the universal levels at the lower levels in creation. Okay, so we just have this is just another diagram of the God structure, the structure of the Akasha God seed, the God cells, 7 at the center, plus the 8 cell that encompasses them, plus the 6 cells, plus the 15 cell that surrounds the whole lot. Now, we're running very tight in time now, so we just have another 5 minutes or so. So this comes array to where are we? So here we have a breakout. This is the Akasha Eya level guitar grid that's from the previous diagrams. that encompasses the structure, the large-scale structure of our universe. So we exist within the Akasha A. We exist within an Akasha A. Sorry, we exist within the Akasha A. We exist within the Akasha A quadrant within that, and we exist within the Akasha corridor within that, and we exist within a Vecca quadrant in that structure. So here, this is our local Akasha. This is our local Akasha A. This is our Akasha. This is our Vecca quadrant, and this is our density 1 level. So where are we? We're within the Akasha A. There's one Akasha A. We're within Akasha A spectra tree. We're within Akasha spectra tree. We're within Akasha corridor 4. Within that, we exist within Vecca quadrant 4 and density level 1 of that. Now we do have a relationship with other other elements, with other Akashas. In the recent diagrams, like Ash highlights where the other, where the Weasley matrix, where the Borgia matrix, and where the Aquarian matrix lie. They correspond to specific locations within that structures. So we have, we'd say this here is we say corresponds to our adjacent Akasha, which houses the Borgia matrix. The Borgia matrix, and and then we have the up here we have the Weasley matrix, and here we have the Aquarian matrix. But the Aquarian matrix, Aquarian matrix, yeah, Weasley. I don't want to go into that in too much detail because, like Ash is talking, is covering that detail. But there are specific, we do have a specific location, and we do have relationship to other parts of the cosmic structure, the cosmic geography. So synthesizing the diagrams then, we have followed the progression up through the cosmic structure, up through Vecca, our local universe, the particle side of our local universe, our local Vecca universe with Vecca core, progressing up into the Akasha level. That Akasha is an element within a larger Akasha A structure, which in turn has a place within a higher level Akasha A, which in turn forms part of the core process of creation, the core process by which creation manifests. Now, we can follow this process. We follow this from the bottom up. We can also follow from the top down. We can begin with the original fields of creation, the Manu, Mane, and Ire, the manifestation of the Christos and the Crystalla, the primary Katara grids, and the interaction of these primary Katara grids creates quadrants. Universes emerge within those quadrants. Each of those universes represented by its own outer Akasha, its own inner Eka core. The interaction between those spawns another level of detail within our universe, creating a substructure, each of which is each substructure represented by an Akasha with its own inner Eka core, and so on set of quadrants. So we move down through 3 levels of structure to arrive at our local Vecca universe with its quadrants, its particum, particle sides, inner Eka core. Now, the term stair step is provides a very valuable key to the process, because we can regard, we say when we're progressing up through the structure, we say we progress, we say up through the density levels within our local universe. We then access the inner Eka core, move into the core, up through the core to the Akasha level, come out to the Akasha level. Now, within this Akasha level, we again progress through the density levels of that Akasha into the inner Eka core at the next level up to the outer Akasha that encompasses that, and we have arrived at a higher level in the cosmic structure. Again, move into the Eka core, up to the outer Akasha, and then we access the top the primary fields within creation. So there is a stepping process by means which we can step up through the cosmic structure, and a similar process by means of which we step down through it. Now, point of interest is that we do have bodies for ourselves at every level. When Source puts consciousness into manifestation in the cosmic structure, it creates bodies to house that consciousness at every level. So we do have bodies at every level within this structure. These are represented by the Eucharistic body. The Eucharistic body is a synthesis of our bodies at every level in the cosmic structure. It's something that's covered in greater detail in Katara 2.3. But if we look at the structure of the Eucharistic bodies, we can see that the angular alignments correspond to the angular orientation of the cosmic structures at every level in creation. You can see that the density level bodies align with, we'll say, the density grids. The Eka levels align with the Eka. The Akasha levels align with the Akasha. The Akasha A levels align with the Akasha A, and so on. So if you examine the diagram for the Eucharistic bodies, you will see a very close correspondence with the cosmic structure of the God worlds. Now, there's just a few points. We just have to finish very quickly now. We do have a relationship to this local structure. We'll say when we're using the dial-up sequence, for example, we're actually progressing through our local connections in the cosmic structure. So we do have, and there are a few points of confusion that we get confused as to where parallel is. We'll say we have parallel universe at the Veka level. We have parallel Eka and Akasha at the Eka and Akasha level. Now, for example, within our Veka has relationship to its Eka core, which in turn has relationship to the outer Akasha that encompasses it. And that in turn has relationship to the parent Akasha A, the parent structure that houses the Akasha. Now, we do have relationship to a parallel Akasha, which in turn has its own Eka core and its own Veka universe. Now, when we're working with the dial-up sequence, for example, we're actually progressing up through the our side of the Eka Akasha structure to access the Adandra flame. This is a flame at the center of our Akasha A. We access that Adandra flame at the center of our Akasha A, and then we come down the other side, come down what's referred to as the Adonai and the Adonai side of the Adonai and the Adonai Akasha structure. So, for example, within our Eka Veka Akasha universe configuration, we have the Ayani races in the Eka, the Iana races at the Akasha. We have the Liatore flame at the center of our Eka, the Itore flame at the center of the Akasha. It's something that hasn't been used very much. We have the Adandra flame at the center of our Akasha A. Then in our parallel Akasha, we have the Adonai races. In the Eka, we have the Adonai races. At the Veka level, on the parallel side, we have the Adonai races. We have the Adore flame. Sorry, the Leodore. Okay, so those are the correspondences that we use in the dial-up sequence. So we're actually traversing our local structure, traversing different levels, parallel levels in our local structure. The other point of interest is that the structure is basically holographic in nature. Like the whole is contained in the parts at every level. So, for example, we'll say if we look at the primal sound fields, we can think that the primal sound fields are only accessible at the top levels in creation. But in fact, the primal sound fields are replicated at every level in the structure. They're replicated at the Veka level, the Eka level, the Akasha level, all the way up through the structure. So we can access every level we can access, we'd say, the Manu, Mani, and Ire currents, the primal light and the primal sound fields at every level within the structure. So the structure is holographic. That means that the whole is represented in all of the parts. So the overall, all the levels of the structure are replicated, are interwoven through all of the parts. Now, we just have to finish there. So basically, the God worlds, it's a huge, huge field. We could spend an awful lot more time exploring all the different aspects and different implications of it and the relevance of the information. But basically, the God worlds, knowledge of the God worlds honors our connection to Source. We're not separate from Source. We have a very, very direct relationship to Source. And creation isn't something that was done to us. Like, we're not victims in creation. we are an active part in creation. Like, we are creators within creation. So part of our stewardship in creation is that we understand, we acquaint ourselves with the structures and are able to work with them. So thank you for your attention, and we leave it at that.